In 1939, a nickel left the mint with a mistake so subtle, it took 40 years to discover. Then in 1953, lightning struck twice, creating what collectors now call the ghost Jefferson. Together, these coins command prices that would pay off your mortgage. The catch? They look almost identical to the common nickels in your pocket. Almost at in 1939, the U.S. Mint produced over 120 million nickels across 3 facilities, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. While most of these coins are worth just a few dollars today, certain rare varieties and striking errors can command prices that would make even seasoned collectors catch their breath. Let's start with the basics. A 1939 Jefferson nickel in circulated condition typically sells for $2 to $5. In uncirculated condition, that value jumps to $20 to $50. But we're not here to talk about ordinary specimens. We're here to uncover the exceptional ones, the coins that make headlines and change lives. Take the story of Robert Martinez from Ohio. In 2018, while sorting through his late grandfather's coin collection, he discovered a 1939 double-die reverse nickel. This rare error, where the reverse side shows distinct doubling in the lettering and Monticello design, sold at auction for $67,000. His grandfather had purchased it for face value decades ago at a local grocery store. The double die error occurs during the hub and die creation process. When the die is made, it requires multiple impressions from a hub to create the complete design. If these impressions aren't perfectly aligned, it creates a distinct doubling effect visible on the finished coin. On the 1939 nickel, this doubling is most noticeable in the words 5 cents and Monticello. But that's just the beginning. The real holy grail of 1939 Jefferson nickels is the double-struck off-center error. This happens when a coin receives multiple strikes from the dies, with at least one strike being significantly off-center. In 2019, a 1939 Philadelphia nickel with a 50% off-center double strike sold for an astounding $182,500 at a heritage auction. The condition of these error coins plays a crucial role in their value. Numismatists use the Sheldon scale, ranging from 1 to 70, to grade coins. A grade of MS 65, mint state 65, or higher can multiply the value of an error coin significantly. A 1939 double-die nickel graded MS 67 sold for $225,000 in 2021, setting a record for the variety. Here's what makes the 1939 nickel particularly interesting. It was produced during a transitional period in U.S. mint history. The mint was still adapting to the relatively new Jefferson design, which had replaced the Buffalo nickel just 1 year earlier. This transition period led to more striking errors and die varieties than usual. Let's break down the key errors to look for on your 1939 nickel. The first and most valuable is the aforementioned double die reverse. Look closely at the lettering and Monticello on the back of the coin. Using a 5x to 10x magnifier, you should be able to see clear separation in the design elements if you have a double die variety. Pay special attention to the columns of Monticello and the word cents. Next is the repunched mint mark variety. On Denver and San Francisco issues, examine the D or S mint mark under high magnification. Some coins show clear signs of the mint mark being punched multiple times, slightly offset from each other. While not as valuable as the double die, these can still command prices in the thousands of dollars. The third major error to watch for is strike-through errors. These occur when foreign material gets between the die and the planchet during striking. The most valuable are dramatic strike-throughs that leave distinct patterns on the coin's surface. A 1939 nickel with a major strike-through error sold for $45,000 in 2020. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of the 1939 nickel is its potential for new discoveries. Unlike many other rare coins that have been thoroughly studied, new varieties of 1939 nickel errors are still being found today. In 2022, a previously unknown triple-struck error was discovered in a roll of nickels purchased from a bank. It later sold $4.95,000. Here's how to examine your 1939 nickel like a professional. Start with the date. Genuine 1939 nickels have a distinct date style. The numbers should be crisp and well defined. If you see any doubling in the date, you might have a valuable variety. Next, check the mint mark if present. Philadelphia issues have no mint mark, while Denver shows AD and San Francisco an S. The mint mark should be examined under magnification for any signs of repunching or unusual positioning. Examine Monticello on the reverse. The building should show clear architectural details. Any doubling or tripling in the columns, steps, or dome could indicate a valuable error variety. Look at the rim and edges. Off-center strikes, multiple strikes, and clip errors are all valuable variations that affect these areas. A proper clip error will show a curved missing section of the coin. The surface texture is crucial. Original mint luster has a distinctive cartwheel effect and the coin is rotated under light. Any unusual textures or patterns could indicate strike-through errors or other valuable varieties. Consider the story of Sarah Chen, a college student who discovered a 1939 nickel with both a double die reverse and a significant strike-through error while helping her grandmother sort old coins. The combination of two major errors on one coin resulted in a sale price of $167,000, enough to pay for her entire college education. Or take James Wilson, a construction worker who found a 1939 D nickel with a dramatic off-center strike while metal detecting at an old house site. The coin, despite being in circulated condition, sold for $78,000 due to its spectacular error. These aren't just lucky finds, they're the result of knowing exactly what to look for. Professional numismatists estimate that there are still hundreds of valuable 1939 nickel errors sitting in collections and change jars, unidentified and waiting to be discovered. The value of these error coins continues to rise. Over the past decade, prices for major 1939 nickel errors have increased by an average of 12% annually. This growth reflects both increasing collector interest and the continuing scarcity of these pieces. Authentication is crucial when dealing with valuable errors. The major grading services, PCGS, NGC, and ANAX, all have extensive experience with 1939 nickel varieties. Any potentially valuable error should be submitted for professional grading and authentication. Weight and size specifications can also help identify genuine errors. A standard 1939 Jefferson nickel should weigh 5 grams and measure 21.2 millimeters in diameter. Any significant deviation could indicate a valuable error, particularly in the case of off-center strikes or multiple strikes. The metal composition is another important factor. 1939 nickels are 75% copper and 25% nickel. This composition gives them a distinctive ring when dropped on a hard surface, a different sound than modern nickels, which have a different metallic composition. The history of these error coins adds another layer of intrigue. During the late 1930s, the U.S. Mint was operating under increased pressure to produce more coins as the economy recovered from the Great Depression. This pressure, combined with the relatively new Jefferson design, created conditions ripe for striking errors. Some of the most valuable 1939 nickel errors show evidence of die deterioration. As dies wore down from extended use, they produced coins with increasingly distinct characteristics. Late-stage die deterioration can create dramatic effects that command premium prices from collectors. To understand the true rarity of these errors, consider this: out of the millions of 1939 nickels produced, fewer than 100 confirmed double die reverse examples are known to exist. The number of major off-center strikes is even smaller, with fewer than 50 authenticated pieces. This scarcity drives the market. When a major 1939 nickel error appears at auction, it often attracts intense bidding from both collectors and investors. The combination of historical significance, rarity, and the potential for new discoveries makes these coins particularly appealing. The search for valuable 1939 nickel errors has become more sophisticated with modern technology. Digital microscopes and high-resolution photography help collectors identify subtle varieties that might have been missed in the past. Online communities share information about new discoveries, helping collectors understand what to look for. But at its heart, the hunt for these valuable coins remains a matter of careful observation and knowledge. Every 1939 nickel deserves a close examination. The next major discovery could be sitting in your pocket change or tucked away in an old collection. The market for these error coins shows no signs of slowing down. As more collectors recognize the historical significance and rarity of 1939 nickel errors, demand continues to grow. Each major sale sets new precedents and attracts more attention to these remarkable pieces of numismatic history. The 1939 Jefferson nickel represents more than just a potentially valuable coin. It's a tangible piece of American history, a reminder of a time when our nation was emerging from the Great Depression and preparing for the challenges that lay ahead. The errors and varieties we find on these coins tell stories of the minting process, the people who made them, and the circumstances under which they were created. The Jefferson nickel series holds countless treasures, but the 1953 edition stands apart as one of the most intriguing years in U.S. coinage history. Today, a single 1953 nickel could be worth anywhere from 5 cents to over $50,000, and in some cases, even more. The difference lies in the details that most people miss. Let's start with the basics. A standard 1953 Jefferson nickel weighs exactly 5 grams and measures 21.2 millimeters in diameter. The obverse features Thomas Jefferson's left-facing profile, while the reverse showcases his beloved Monticello estate. But here's where things get interesting. It's the imperfections, the mistakes, and the rarities that turn a common 5-cent piece into a numismatic gold mine. Take the story of Robert Martinez, a coin roll hunter from Ohio. In 2019, he was sorting through a box of nickels from his local bank when he spotted something unusual, a 1953 nickel with a dramatic die break across Jefferson's face. That single coin sold for $3,800 at auction. But that's just the beginning of what's possible with these coins. The 1953 nickel series is particularly notorious for its double die varieties. When the hub imprints the design onto a die multiple times, and those impressions don't align perfectly, we get what collectors call a double die error. On the 1953 nickel, this doubling can be most prominently seen in the letters of Liberty and the date. The most valuable double die variety from this year shows clear separation in the letters, especially visible in the B and E of Liberty. Sarah Chen, a collector from San Francisco, made headlines in the numismatic world when she discovered a 1953 nickel with significant doubling while cleaning out her grandmother's old coin collection. The coin, which she initially thought was worth just 5 cents, ended up selling for $28,750 at a heritage auction in 2021. The doubling on her coin was so pronounced that it created what appeared to be a shadow effect on the lettering, but double dies aren't the only errors that make these coins valuable. The 1953 nickel series is known for several distinct error types that can significantly impact value. Let's break them down, starting with the more common varieties and working our way up to the real heavy hitters. First, there are repunched mint marks. In 1953, mint marks were still added to the dies by hand, leading to occasional misalignments. A repunched mint mark occurs when the mint mark was stamped multiple times in slightly different positions. On 1953 nickels, these can appear as overlapping or offset D or S mint marks. While not the most valuable error, a clear repunched mint mark can still command $100 to $500, depending on condition. Then we have off-center strikes. When a planchet isn't perfectly centered during the striking process, part of the design can be missing, with a corresponding blank crescent on the opposite side. The value of off-center strikes depends largely on how far off-center they are and whether the date is still visible. A 1953 nickel struck 5 to 10% off-center might bring $50 to $100, while one struck 50% off-center with a visible date could fetch $1,000 or more. But here's where things get really interesting. The 1953 series has some of the most dramatic die breaks ever recorded on Jefferson nickels. A die break occurs when part of the die cracks or breaks during the minting process. These can create raised lines or bumps on the coin, known as die cracks or die breaks. In extreme cases, they can create what collectors call a cud, a raised, blank area where a piece of the die has broken away completely. One particularly valuable type of die break found on 1953 nickels is known as the buffalo head break. This dramatic error shows a large raised area near Jefferson's head that, coincidentally, resembles the buffalo design from earlier 5-cent pieces. Only 3 examples of this specific error are known to exist, with one selling for $45,000 in 2018. The rarest and most valuable errors from 1953 are the wrong planchet errors. These occur when a nickel is struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination. The most famous example is the 1953 nickel struck on a silver dime planchet. Only 2 are known to exist, with one selling for $88,125 in 2016. Even more remarkable is a unique 1953 D nickel struck on a cent planchet, which sold for $114,000 in 2020. Speaking of die varieties, let's talk about the elusive 1953 Bugs Bunny variety. This unusual die variety shows extra metal between Jefferson's lips that makes him appear to have buck teeth, similar to the famous cartoon character. While not as valuable as some of the major errors, this variety consistently sells for $200 to $500 in uncirculated condition, with the finest known example bringing $2,800 at auction. But perhaps the most fascinating aspect of 1953 nickels is the possibility of finding previously undiscovered varieties. Unlike many other years, the 1953 nickel series hasn't been as thoroughly studied as some other dates, meaning there's still potential for new discoveries. In fact, just last year, a collector in Michigan found a previously unknown double die variety showing strong doubling in the steps of Monticello. When examining your 1953 nickels, pay special attention to the following areas: the mint mark, look for repunching or unusual positioning; the date, check for doubling or unusual spacing; the inscriptions, examine Liberty and In God We Trust. For doubling Monticello's steps, look for clear step definition and possible doubling; the rim, check for any unusual raised areas or dies breaks the surface, examine for any raised lines or unusual textures. One often overlooked aspect of 1953 nickels is the strike quality. The Philadelphia Mint, in particular, had issues with weak strikes that year, especially on Monticello's steps. Counterintuitively, a weakly struck 1953 nickel in high grade can sometimes be worth more than a well-struck example because they're harder to find in pristine condition. Collectors call these FSF, full step finish, specimens, and they can command significant premiums. The condition of your 1953 nickel plays a crucial role in its value, even without errors. In uncirculated condition, known as mint state, MS, regular 1953 nickels can be worth $20 to $100. But add an error or variety to a high-grade specimen, and the value can multiply exponentially. A regular MS 66 1953 nickel might be worth $125, but an MS 66 double die could bring $15,000 or more. Temperature and striking pressure variations during minting also created some interesting variants. Some 1953 nickels show what's called machine doubling, which can be mistaken for true double dies. The key difference is that machine doubling appears flat and shelf-like, while true double dies show more rounded, distinct secondary images. Learning to distinguish between these can save you from paying premium prices for less valuable varieties. The story of Tom Wilson, a construction worker from Nevada, illustrates why it's worth checking every 1953 nickel that crosses your path. While metal detecting at an old drive-in theater site, he found a 1953 D nickel with a dramatic die crack running through Monticello. Initially disappointed it wasn't gold or silver, he almost discarded it. But after cleaning it carefully and researching online, he discovered it was a rare progressive die break variety. That coin, which he found in the dirt, sold for $4,200 at a local coin show. Some of the most valuable 1953 nickels aren't obvious errors at all, but rather perfect specimens from dies that were showing wear. Late die state coins, where the die was approaching the end of its useful life, can show interesting characteristics like flow lines and deteriorated details. While these might look like damage to the uninitiated, advanced collectors often pay premiums for coins that help document the minting process. Here's a tip that most YouTube videos won't tell you: the best way to identify valuable 1953 nickel varieties is to study known examples extensively before hunting for your own. Build a reference library of high-resolution photos, focusing on both major and minor varieties. This way, when you're examining coins, you'll know exactly what to look for and where to look for it. The investment potential of 1953 nickels continues to grow. Over the past decade, prices for major errors and varieties have increased by an average of 12% annually. This growth isn't just limited to the spectacular errors. Even more common varieties have seen steady appreciation as more collectors recognize the historical significance and scarcity of these coins. Consider the case of the 1953 dropped letter variety, where the T in trust appears to be sitting lower than the other letters. When first discovered in 2012, these sold for around $200. Today, the same variety regularly commands $1,500 or more, representing a significant return on investment for early discoverers. One of the most recent discoveries in the 1953 nickel series came from an unexpected source, a vending machine collector who was cleaning out old machines from the 1960s. Among the thousands of coins he found was a 1953 nickel struck through grease, a striking error where lubricant on the die created a ghostly appearance on parts of the design. While strike-through errors are generally common, this particular example was so dramatic and well-preserved that it sold for $3,200 at auction. Authentication is crucial when dealing with valuable varieties. The major grading services, PCGS, NGC, and ANAX, have certified many 1953 nickel varieties, and their population reports can give us insight into true rarity. For example, PCGS has certified fewer than 50 examples of the major double die variety in all grades combined, making it rarer than many better-known U.S. coin varieties.